This man was tricked into getting married by this person who he thought was a woman. In 2023, this 26-year-old Indonesian man named AK met Adinda Kanza on Instagram, where they hit it off and eventually met in person and started their relationship. Throughout their relationship, Adinda wore a hijab that covered her head, her face, except for her eyes because of her religion. A year later, they got married and had a very small ceremony with only AK's family attending, and Adinda's family was not there because she said that her entire family had passed away. After they tied the knot, AK became extremely suspicious of his new wife because she constantly avoided any intimacy and was always making excuses. But also, AK said that Adinda was wearing her hijab at home at all times, so at this point he knew that she was hiding something. He then began searching for any information he can find on his wife, and that's when he found her old address, and when he went to go visit that home, he found her parents, which she said were dead. The parents told AK that Adinda is actually a man, and they had no idea that they got married. Adinda was arrested, and after an investigation was done, it was determined that he intended to marry AK so that he can steal his family's assets. Adinda was charged with fraud, and if convicted, he faces up to 4 years in prison.
Whatever you do, never go searching for this video. These 5 friends were forced to kill each other by the Mexican cartel. These 5 young aged from 19 to 22 were looking for some sort of employment, and they were promised a high-paying job at a call center. But when the alleged contact was taking them to meet the people for the job, it actually turned out to be a whole scheme to recruit them to the Mexican cartel. And when all 5 of these boys said they didn't want to join, the cartel then said okay and tied them up, taped their mouth and took a picture, and then recorded one of the friends killing all the other 4 friends. And after that, they put the 5th one, who just killed all of his friends, into a car and set it on fire. I am telling you right now, do not go searching for this video because you will find it. And trust me, you do not want to see something like this. This case is absolutely horrific, and the fact that this happens way more often than we think is just extremely scary and disturbing. It's just sad that these young men were just trying to get a job and make some money for themselves, but instead it turned into a living nightmare. Rest in peace, these 5 young men.
Here's one more reason to be terrified of the ocean. Of course it's scary when the sea is stormy, but according to Japanese legend, you should be more afraid of calm waters, because that is when the umi bosu is said to rise from the deep. This ghostly pitch black figure will not only scare you into a state of shock, but it will then throw you overboard and drown you in the sea.
It is criminal that no one knows what this guy is doing right now. A man is attempting to become the first person ever to walk the entire length of the United States barefoot. He started his over 5,000 kilometer walk in February, and as you'd imagine, his feet have already taken an absolute battering. He's already had to walk through snow, which he says was so cold that it makes every pebble feel like you're walking over a Lego brick. But if the cold wasn't bad enough, he will soon have to walk through the Midwestern summer heat, which will easily reach temperatures of over 100 degrees. And because of that, similar to Russ Cook running through the Sahara, he says that he's gonna have to walk overnight because during the day, the paving will just be too hot. He's almost been hit multiple times by massive semi-trucks not paying attention and pushing him off the road. The nerve endings on his feet are so bruised from stepping on rocks that it keeps him up at night. He's had really bad infections that haven't had enough time to heal, because if he does take days off and doesn't make it to New York before the winter, he is screwed. And the part which just blows my mind, he's doing all of this to raise awareness for men's mental health, because he himself, after leaving the army, fell into such a deep depression that it led him to the edge of a cliff. But despite this amazing cause and what he's putting himself through, he has only 139 followers on TikTok and only 412 on YouTube. I mean, that should be illegal. He's got about 6 months of walking left to do. So please, let's show this man some support and push him through.
Have you heard the creepy story behind this photo? She's been named the expressionless. Well, the story takes place in June of 1972. Hospital employees were very shocked and scared when this woman entered the hospital wearing a blood-soaked gown. What was terrifying is that she had no emotion on her face. When the doctors went to sedate her to see what was wrong, she started to fight back. This is her in that very moment. Now, this is a creepypasta, but some believe that this photo is actually true and that this is a real creepy-ass woman. Let me know what you think in the comments below.
Photos from his
This is a real sign in a city called Davao in the Philippines, and there's a lot of history behind it. Now, as you can see in the sign, it says, "Waving children, please wave back," with a pair of children with their arms up. This sign serves as a warning to everyone passing by that there are ghosts of children in the area. It's believed there's a ton of supernatural activity all around the area, and if you don't wave back, these children will come and haunt you. Upon researching this story, I haven't found anyone reporting that they haven't waved back to any of the children. I've only heard accounts of people waving back and then being okay afterwards. So with that information in my head, I can only assume the worst happens if you don't wave back. So obviously, if you're traveling in the Philippines and you see a child wave to you, wave back for your own safety. The last thing you want is a ghost child following you and haunting you for the rest of your life. Let me know what you guys think about this. I also covered a video on the Aswang, which is another Filipino urban legend. Very scary stuff. Definitely go check that out. And if you have any suggestions, let me know.
This is a true horrifying story, part 32. In parts 25, 26, and 27, I warned you all about the most dangerous book that was ever written, Shams al-Ma'arif. This book is a portal to the world of jinns and demons. There's a person that read this book, and this person faces traumatic incidents every single day. She's a woman from Jordan. She graduated university being the top graded student. She is a genius. She has read hundreds of novels. She had a strong passion for books. She heard about this book called Shams al-Ma'arif. She couldn't live knowing that there's a book that has a strong story behind it without reading it. After many months of trying to find the real copy of this book, she heard about an old man that lives in Jordan that had an ancient copy of Shams al-Ma'arif. She got in touch with him and he refused to sell the book, but she didn't quit. It took her many weeks to finally buy the book off of him. She goes back home and immediately starts reading the book. After she read the first few chapters of the book, she felt kinda hungry, so she decided to go to the kitchen and prepare some food and then continue reading. As she goes into the kitchen, she opens the oven and a gale of fire burns her face. She spent 3 weeks in the burn unit rehabilitation. The oven was switched off. No one knows till this day where the flames came from. She had multiple plastic surgeries to recover her facial features, but till this day, her face is not what it used to be. After recovery, she goes home weeks later and she looks for the book, knowing that the jinn was the reason she was harmed. She tried to find the book for many days, but it was lost. Years go by. She was home watching TV one day. She came across an Islamic channel that had a live interview program. An old man was being interviewed on this channel. He was asked by the imams about the dangers of a black magic book that he owns. His body was very unusual and his face was burned off. He got a book from under the table and he said this: "I once sold this book to a young woman a long time ago, and the demons warned me not to stop my rituals, and if I gave the book away, they would burn my face and they would burn hers. And after I gave the book, I woke up the next day without my normal face. And the book I sold to that woman was right there laying next to me on bed. I knew that it was the jinns that brought the book back to me. And this is when I strengthened my iman and I quit black magic." Quote, this was all said on TV, and the poor girl was just standing there, watching the same man speak. The man on TV was the man that gave her the book. The book he showed on TV was the book he handed to her. That was the book that was lost. The book that she was looking for.
This is Tragedy by the Sea, one of the most disturbing and sad photos of all time. Okay, so first glance at this photo, you just think it's a couple arguing at the beach, right? But believe it or not, this photo might have the most unsettling and disturbing backstory ever. On the morning of April 2nd, 1954, Los Angeles Times photographer named John Gaunt, who is pictured in the middle of this photo, was relaxing on his front yard of his beachfront house when he heard a neighbor shout, "Something's happening on the beach." He then instinctively grabbed his camera and rushed over to see the horrified couple clutching each other on the beach. On the shore stood a young couple named Mr. and Mrs. McDonald, and their body language made John's stomach turn. He realized that someone must be lost, and he then took a photograph from 200 yards away. Only then did he learn that just moments before, the couple's 19-month-old son Michael, who had been playing in the yard, had wandered down to the beach and crawled into the violent waters while they weren't looking. Despite the back and forth efforts by the parents, there was nothing they can do but just wait. Unfortunately, later that day, the child's dead body was washed up about a mile away on the beach. And this photo, titled "Tragedy by the Sea," appeared on the front page of the Times the very next day. John Gaunt then won the 1955 Pulitzer Prize Award, calling the photo poignant and profoundly moving. But he also received heavy criticism for capitalizing on the family's tragedy for his photo opportunity. But now take a look at this photo, knowing everything you do, and tell me it's not one of the saddest and most disturbing photos ever.
Let's talk about this picture. Captured in 2008 by Daniel Young, this is one of the only pieces of evidence that this encounter actually happened. So Daniel was a custodian at Myrtle Elementary School, where he worked the night shift. It's a pretty routine night. He's just listening to music when he's suddenly interrupted by the sound of a woman's laughter. He turned around and was terrified when he saw an unknown woman smiling from behind the corner. This was a locked school on after hours, so clearly she was an adult who broke in, so he tried to snap a picture to identify her and then chases after her. But when he turned the corner, she had already darted out of an emergency exit. Later that night, police are called to a home where they arrive at a tragedy. An unknown woman had broken into a nearby home where she knifed two parents, one who was the principal of this school, so brutally they were unrecognizable. One of the daughters who witnessed this woman before she got away described her as this person. Could this photo be of the same unknown woman? And what her connection is to the school and the principal, we don't know.
Most disturbing videos in the world, episode 6. This picture contains a list of disturbing videos from the least scary to the most. This will be my scariest series ever. Welcome to tier 7 because we skipped a couple of them. And honestly today, we're gonna skip directly to tier 10. The first video is titled Funky Town. This video single-handedly could be the worst video the internet has ever had. Now obviously I can't show the video here, but I can tell you everything you need to know about it. And please remember, don't look this up. Trust me. It shows a man, getting executed, in which they remove the man's face all while he's still alive. And lots of other stuff start happening. And in the background of the video, the song Funky Town starts playing. You know this song? Yeah, that one. Make sure to like and follow because I start my brand new series tomorrow.
This is the disturbing moment this woman laughed in court after she took this 3-year-old's life in a random attack. On June 3rd, police received numerous phone calls about a stabbing at a grocery store parking lot in Ohio. At around 3 p.m. on this day, 38-year-old Margot Wood was loading groceries into her car while her 3-year-old son Julian sat in his car seat. That's when 32-year-old Bianca Ellis entered the car and began stabbing the little boy. When Margot noticed, she tried to stop the attacker, and as a result, she was also wounded. Julian was then rushed to the hospital where he unfortunately passed away. Now, what's disturbing was that this was a random attack, and after looking at surveillance footage, the attacker was seen following the mother and the child in and out of the grocery store. Then, when Bianca was brought into court, the judge began reading out the indictment, and she was seen smiling and laughing the entire time. And after an assessment was done on Bianca, they're arguing that she has bipolar disorder and had a psychotic break, which explains why she did what she did. And this story only gets crazier. Before this incident, Bianca confessed to another murder in Bakersfield, and she even gave details of what she did with this person's body. She also warned officers that if she wasn't arrested, she was going to murder someone and eat their flesh. But none of this was taken too serious, and she was released from the mental institution, and not long after, she committed this heinous crime.
So, let's talk about the most disturbing animated film ever made that has been banned all over the world. 1992's Midori. Our main character is 12-year-old Midori. After her mother becomes extremely ill, she is tricked into joining a traveling circus. And these are some of the fine people that she is surrounded by every day. The film contains a lot of very explicit scenes of violence and other things towards young Midori. The film is also known for its animal content. When it was originally released, Midori was banned all over the world, including in its own home country of Japan, and I can definitely see why. I'm not kidding when I say this is probably the most graphic, strange, animated film that has probably ever been made. And this is most certainly not a film for a lot of people. It's a film I really don't feel like I can recommend, but there are lots of very interesting discussions around the morality of this film. And if you've seen this film, I'd love to know what you guys think of it.
The man you just saw walking in that video was pedophile Jeffrey Doucette. Jeffrey was a 25-year-old karate instructor. Jeffrey gave karate lessons to young boys, and it's assumed that he did this to gain access to children because he was a pedophile. Now, at some point along the way, Jeffrey met the son of a man named Gary Plauché. Gary was a very protective father who loved his son dearly. And when Gary eventually found out that Jeffrey had been molesting his son for over a year, he was righteously angry. But Gary just wasn't going to let this slide. You see, for a year, Gary had trusted Jeffrey to take care of his son and teach him karate. But at one point, Jeffrey had abducted his son, taken him to a motel in Anaheim, California, and did absolutely unspeakable things to him. So that leads us to the infamous televised incident. On that day, Jeffrey was flown to Louisiana to face trial. There was a news team there waiting for him at the airport for when he arrived into the state, but there was somebody else waiting for Jeffrey there as well, Gary Plauché. I can't show you the full clip, obviously, but Gary was waiting for Jeffrey to walk down that hallway, and when he walked by him, he pulled out a handgun and shot Jeffrey, the man who molested his son, directly in the head. Afterwards, Gary gave himself up, dropped the gun, and he was initially charged with second-degree murder. But he entered a plea bargain and pled no contest to the manslaughter charges. He was then sentenced to 7 years of a suspended sentence, with 5 years of probation and 300 hours of community service, meaning that Gary spent no extended time in prison for the murder of the pedophile. To this day, people still sell merchandise with Gary Plauché all over it, as he has become a folk hero of sorts to people that hate pedophiles. If you want to hear more stories like this, listen to the podcast Murder in America that I co-host with my wife Courtney. It's available to listen to now on all streaming platforms. The person you just saw in that video was former elected official and pedophile Stacey Marie Lofton. Stacey was the first openly transgender person elected to a state legislature anywhere in the United States. And people at the time in New Hampshire who elected Stacey thought that this was extremely radical. They were proud that they were inclusive and that they were giving power to an underrepresented population. However, Stacey would go on to do some terrible things. Because you see, in 2023, Stacey would be arrested and charged with possession of CP or CSAM. I still don't know the exact connection, but Stacey was arrested as well as this woman, a 38-year-old woman named Lindsay Groves. Now, Lindsay worked at a place called Creative Minds Early Learning Center in Massachusetts, where she worked closely with children. And apparently, Lindsay would use the bathroom breaks during the children's school day to take photographs of them. Photographs of them in compromising positions with no clothing on. Lindsay would then send these photos to the person she was in a relationship with, and I guess somehow some of those photos ended up in Stacey's possession. Now, I don't know what happened to Stacey after all of this, but I do know that it was reported that Stacey went to a prison for men. And yeah, this is just some really disturbing stuff. If you want to listen to more true crime stories, listen to the podcast that I co-host with my wife Courtney, Murder in America. It's available now on all streaming platforms.
Top 10 most evil people in history. Number 10 is Saddam Hussein. We all remember Saddam. Number 9, Kim Jong-il, who is the uncle and the former leader of Kim Jong-un of North Korea, and he was even worse than Kim Jong-un. Like, even though Kim Jong-un is bad, like, we got a step up from Kim Jong-il. I remember reading that he once fed his family to dogs. Number 8 is Genghis Khan, the guy, you know, the Mongolia Chinese wall, the Great Wall of China, forced everybody to do that. Number 7, Heinrich Himmler, one of the right-hand men in the Nazi Party, was just all around evil. Number 6, Pol Pot. Terrible man, maybe was one of the most ruthless killers in history. Number 5, Mao Zedong, the terrible emperor of China. Number 4, Osama bin Laden, the fool who committed 9/11 and went in hiding, and then we all forgot about him until Obama was like, we're actually going to go get him now. And I was like, thank God. Number 3, Vlad the Impaler. Vlad the Impaler is the basis for the character of Dracula. His middle name was Dragula, and he was known for impaling his victims on sticks and posing them in front of the castle. Number 2, Joseph Stalin, who was the leader of Russia during World War II, and he was basically one of the most ruthless killers as well. He had concentration camps for the Russians that didn't support him, and millions of people died under him. If you like this list and want more lists about other nonsense, follow me. Leave me a comment with the most evil person in history in your book. Also follow my Instagram and fiance Samantha, who I've tagged. Number 1, I can't even say his name on TikTok, but we all know who it is. Evil Austrian mustache man.
Think twice before you answer the door on Halloween night. On Halloween night in 1984, a pregnant mom named Doreen Erbert heard the doorbell ring. She opened the door to find someone in a wolf mask holding a machete. This was like a scene straight out of a horror movie, and she was viciously slaughtered in front of her 4-year-old daughter. Special attention had been made to harm the fetus as well, and it was found under this chair. Luckily, when the attack started, her daughter hid behind the couch, and then the man in the wolf mask paced around the house looking for her. The man in the mask shouted that if she said anything, he was going to come back and kill her too. Crime scene investigators noticed a trail of blood leading from the house down the sidewalk and across the freeway to a nearby neighborhood. This attack happened shortly after her husband left to go to the store, and he came home just a few minutes after she died. But luckily, officers did their due diligence. Looking into Doreen's past, they found out she had a tumultuous marriage with her ex-husband, Michael Dennis. And they actually had a child that drowned under Doreen's supervision in 1980. 2 years later, this distraught ex sued Doreen for the death of their child but lost in court. And just hours after the murder, the police paid a visit to Michael Dennis. He was calm and collected and gave consent to search, but as he reached out to sign the form, they noticed a gash on his hand. He said he got this injury from carving pumpkins the day before, but they noticed that the blood was still clotting. He began to walk detectives up towards his bedroom and lunged towards the bed, and they were luckily able to tackle him before he grabbed his revolver. And also inside the house, they found blood near the washing machine, and blood was all over his car door handle and steering wheel. His past girlfriend also said that the previous Halloween he went to a party wearing a wolf mask, pictured here. Michael Dennis was charged for the death of Doreen and her unborn child. And due to the brutality, he was actually given the death penalty. Michael Dennis had never moved on and hated Doreen for finding love and having another. And I have to say, if you've lost a child, Halloween is probably a really difficult day to look outside and see kids running around everywhere. But that does not excuse his actions. Let me know what case you want me to cover next and follow for more true crime.
It is wild. This is actually happening. Celebrities are now losing thousands of followers in an unprecedented TikTok trend where people are deliberately blocking the rich and famous so that they lose their sponsorships, their brand deals, and ultimately money. And you know what? It's working. So here's how the blockout trend started, and more interestingly, why. This is Hailey Bailey. She's a model and a content creator, and she doesn't know it yet, but she's about to trigger a massive digital revolution against the world's celebrities and herself, all with one video.
Let them eat cake. He took the bomb.
But to understand why what she did here caused so much outrage, we need to go back to the 1800s. I'm not even joking, the Queen of France in 1774 has somehow triggered a massive revolution on TikTok in 2024. Marie Antoinette was actually the last queen before the French Revolution, because at a time where the country was in extreme debt and the people were living in poverty and famine, Marie was seen living a lavish lifestyle and spending huge amounts of money on unnecessary things. For example, she was best known for her extreme looks and love for fashion. Her annual clothing budget alone was equivalent to today's $3.6 million. That's $300K a month. But ironically, what she is most remembered for is the time that she was told that the public were starving and they didn't have enough bread to eat, to which she replied, "Let them eat cake." And I say it's ironic because it's believed that she never actually even said this. Regardless, the public's anger grew and led to a revolution and ultimately her execution. So back to 2024 when Hailey Bailey dressed up as Marie Antoinette and used a trending sound saying "let them eat cake" while outside the Met Gala, where tickets cost more than the average down payment for a house. She quickly became the modern Marie Antoinette and triggered the blockout revolution. Now since then, she has apologized and said she didn't know the implications of that quote before she used it. And while the anger started with just her video, with one of the top comments saying "we're giving you the Marie Antoinette experience," it quickly grew to all of the celebrities that attended that event and beyond. The Hunger Games societal disparity became the movement theme, with hundreds of people commenting "watching from District 12." Creators have started making videos showing off their own daily celebrity block lists, and the people who join the trend say that the movement is simple. Just like how the French people's taxes were funding Antoinette's lavish lifestyle while they starved, today the public's attention is often what funds these celebrities' lifestyles. And so people say if they're using this attention money similar to Antoinette on massive unnecessary displays of wealth, all while people around the world struggle and starve, that attention and therefore money will be removed. And that's how and why the block trend started. So the question is, do you agree with this trend, or are people taking it way too far?